Hey everyone, I'm Shannon Gonter, a professional counselor here in Louisville, Kentucky, and welcome to our Ask Anything series. These are questions that you guys have submitted and that are going to be answered by local professionals in mental health and wellness fields. And today we are going to be with Miss Carrie Hunter. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is a part of a small group practice in New Albany, Indiana. Carrie has been providing mental health services to teens and adults for nearly 25 years. She treats clients in person and via telehealth. Carrie is an active individual with Kentuckiana LGBTQ+, and she does lots of advocacy, she does lots of education work, and she provides direct mental health care to her clients. If you want to learn more about her, you can reach out at 812-206-3291. But, Carrie, today our question is, what is EMDR? EMDR is found a lot on therapist directories or therapist websites, and I think prospective clients are just kind of curious to why they see those four letters so often.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, the four letters stand for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
Okay.
And that's a complete mouthful. Right. And that's why we use the initials. The initials sort of point to both the how and what we hope to have happen. The how is eye movements. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But let's talk about the D and the R. Desensitization is what we want to have happen. People are too triggered up and freaked out by reminders. So we want to lower that again. Think about it as like turning your thermostat. We want to desensitize people to hear things on the radio or see things on a TV show. We want to desensitize that. The reprocessing is I sometimes call it rewiring, is about sort of in a person's brain what they come to think about themselves, believe about themselves, or think about other people as a result of things that might have happened to them. Like, I suck, I never do anything right, I don't fit in. And we want to reprocess that to, I don't suck any worse than anyone else does. or, I can find my place to fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are kind of the two aims of what we want to have happen. And the eye movements are part of how we do that. The eye movements, in the fancy language, is referred to as bilateral stimulation. Bilateral means both sides of the body. Both sides of the body stimulates both sides of the brain. And so eye movements are one way to do that, where we get people to move their eyes back and forth across the middle of their face. But there are other ways to do that if people don't see well or have eye muscle problems or visual concerns. Then we can do other things, like a little handheld device that you hold one in each hand and they buzz, like if you set your phone to vibrate, that sort of a buzz.
Okay.
Goes back and forth from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Or some people wear headphones that will play a beep back and forth from one side to the other. Okay. And there's a lot of really cool science about that. But that's part of it. So that it's like part of your mind pays attention to the buzzing or pays attention to the eye movements. I mean, you have to pay attention to get your eyes to move. And the other part of your mind is like thinking about or engaged in what happened at some other point.
Gotcha.
And that's very different than talking about things. Sure. Talking about things can be very helpful. Many of my clients have already been in therapy for 10 years and talked about things. And it didn't make much difference because talking about things is really only involving mostly your left hemisphere.
I was going to say, this sounds like going down a level.
Right. So there's more than just your right and your left hemisphere, but there's other, and I always confess, I'm like a brain nerd. I have pictures of the brain in my office and I'm always pointing to, but there are other parts of the brain that don't get engaged and involved in just talking about things.
Yeah.
And I was originally trained in that way. And some people were like, wow, I never thought about that before. And that did make a difference. However, they might have still been having flashbacks or they might have still been having freakouts. And so EMDR seems to combine many of those things. And another way to think about it and why I like it is people don't have to talk about what happened in order for EMDR to be efficient and effective.
Okay.
And so it's very effective for people because of developmental disabilities or other reasons. Either they don't want to have to tell the details, or they don't have the verbal ability to tell the details. But EMDR can still be effective.
Yeah.
That's different than other therapies where people are asked to tell all the details over and over and over again.
Sure.
And in my experience, when I was doing that, people quit therapy, and I don't blame them.
Yeah. There's some barriers of like, okay, you're in therapy now. Now tell me everything that's ever happened in your whole life.
Right. And some people come in and believe they still have to do that. I'm like, oh, wait, no. I know your brain already knows this stuff. And I don't need to know for this to be effective.
Yeah. Part of trusting the system to allow some rewiring to occur.
Right. So when EMDR was originally developed in the late 80s and early 1990s, Francine Shapiro, who developed it, was working with combat veterans, Vietnam vets, nurses. Everybody thinks like, oh yeah, that kind of trauma. And people think car accidents. Oh yeah, that kind of trauma. And people think sexual assaults. Oh yeah, that kind of trauma. Also are things that happen when we're little kids, like how come you can't be like your big sister? Or coming home from school and finding your parents passed out from alcohol or drugs, or having a mother who's depressed or a father who's depressed, and how come you never came to my games? We think of those as traumas as well, because they are traumatic to a child. What happens to a 6-year-old is very different than how it happens to a 16-year-old.
Sure.
The event can be the same, but what that person makes in terms of meaning about that event can be very different. EMDR can be really effective with those kinds of things, so we don't necessarily think of as traumas.
Yeah.
Or living in poverty, walking down the street and always being afraid on your way to school. Yeah. So originally it was developed for things that pretty much everyone would agree. Oh yeah, that's traumatic. And so over time, as people have used EMDR all over the world, it's used for so many things now. Panic attacks, social anxiety, like what am I going to wear to school today? I'm going to look like a dork. I don't know, do people say dork anymore? Yeah. So there are many, many things that EMDR can be effective with.
Yeah. If someone wants to find an EMDR therapist or someone who does it, not every therapist does EMDR. So how do they navigate that process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, you can just Google EMDR therapist near me. Yeah, I haven't done that recently, but you might find some. There are other places, sometimes even calling your insurance company. That's important for many people. Call up your insurance company, the number on the back of your card, and because when we get signed up with insurance companies ask us what are the methods or methodologies or techniques that we use. So that's one way you could call your insurance company, find out who's covered, and then ask more. So are any of these people EMDR therapists? Another way is to look online. Psychology Today is one example, but there are other places online where therapists have listed themselves, and they also put in their biographies. These are the ways that I work with my clients. So you can find people that way.
And I'm not certified in EMDR, but does EMDR, like EMDRI, have like a website where they list all their certified?
Oh, yes, they do. And EMDRIA, that's EMDR International Association. And that's really cool because there are people all over the world who are trained in and use EMDR. So they have this cool therapist locator. You click on that button and you put your zip code, and you can say how many miles, like within a 25-mile radius or whatever, and find a therapist near you.
Very cool.
And I got trained in 2002, so I've been doing this a very long time. I know that there are people who more recently trained, are very skilled and very just got a lot of experience, even recently trained. It's always important to think about, if I have a particular concern, perhaps like substance abuse, I might want my EMDR therapist to be very skilled with EMDR and also very skilled and knowledgeable about substance abuse.
Sure.
For example, I don't work with children under 14. I don't have experience or training or skill with that. So you want to find out about your therapist's particular niche and area of expertise and practice.
Yeah. And then EMDR is something that can really aid in the therapy process.
Right, right. As an example, EMDR can be really effective with substance abuse, and people who have been, whatever term you want to call that, clean for a long time, who still have urges and wishes,
Mm-hmm.
EMDR can really help with that.
Very cool.
In addition to people who are still using and want to stop,
Sure.
or eating disorders, or there are even protocols for chronic pain management for people who have pain for a long time.
Very cool. Oh, well, thank you. This is all such good information. Is there anything, any kind of last sentence or phrase or anything about EMDR that you want people to know?
Well, just that I kind of feel like an evangelist, because
Yeah,
it has been so amazing for my clients
I'm
who
sure.
have been in years of therapy. And clients are, sometimes they're angry. They're like, where the heck was this my whole life?
Oh, yeah,
Uh-huh.
of course.
But many clients are very, very thankful because they've been living with terrible things for a really long time, and they can finally let go and move on.
Yeah, take a breath, I'm sure. Oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
all such good info. Thank you for answering these questions for us. Everyone who's
You're welcome.
listening, remember, call her at 812-206-3291 if you want to learn more about her and her counseling services. And if you have a question for us that you want us to answer, just DM us and we will get that answered for you. But okay, well, have a good day.